Being kind can hurt you unless you learn this, but anew, let me ask you something that might shake the foundation of what you believe to be good. Can kindness be dangerous? That sounds absurd at first. After all, isn't kindness the purest expression of humanity? Isn't it what we're taught from childhood, that being kind is not only right but necessary? But what if I told you that kindness, when given blindly, can actually destroy lives? That it can delay healing, enable harm, and leave you empty and broken, despite your best intentions? In this video, we're going to dive deep into what ancient wisdom, particularly that of the Buddha, teaches us about the fine line between compassion and self-destruction. Because being kind is not enough. Kindness without wisdom is like giving water to a drowning man. But I've been thinking a lot lately about the people in my life, friends, strangers, even online communities who give so much of themselves out of love, empathy, or duty, but only to be used, discarded, or worse, forgotten. And I include myself in this. I've given too much, said yes when I should have said no, stayed when I should have walked away. There's something profoundly painful in realizing that what you thought was your virtue, your kindness, has been the very thing people used against you. But before we fall into bitterness or cynicism, let's take a step back and ask, what is kindness really?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Buddha once said, if you light a lamp for someone, it will also brighten your own path. But here's the part we forget. What if you keep lighting lamps for others until your own fire goes out? What if you give so much that you're left in darkness? That's not compassion. That's self-betrayal. And the Buddha knew that. His teachings were never about blind kindness. They were about wise compassion. There's a reason why right intention and right action are part of the Eightfold Path. You don't just act from the heart, you act from the heart guided by insight. Let me give you an example. Imagine a person drowning in a river. You see them, and without thinking, you dive in. That's kindness, right? But what if you don't know how to swim? Then both of you drown. That's not compassion. That's tragedy. A wise person throws a rope or calls for help. They act not just out of impulse, but from awareness. This is the core of what we're missing in our everyday acts of kindness, discernment. We live in a world that often glorifies martyrdom. People who give everything are praised as saints. But there's a hidden cost. You burn out. You lose your sense of self. You end up bitter, exhausted, and ironically, less kind. The people who always say yes get used. The people who never complain get overlooked. And over time they begin to fade, not because they weren't good enough, but because they gave parts of themselves to people who never knew what they were receiving. I want you to ask yourself something. Who in your life has taken your kindness for granted? Be honest. Think about the times you said yes when everything in your gut screamed no. Think about when you kept forgiving, kept showing up, kept giving second chances, not because the other person changed, but because you hoped they would. That hope is beautiful. But hope without boundaries is a trap. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. And sometimes we're not just attached to people, we're attached to the idea of being good. We want to be seen as kind, loving, compassionate. We want to be the one who heals others, who saves the day. But here's the paradox. If your kindness is driven by ego, by the need to be seen as good, then it's not really selfless. It becomes a silent transaction. I give so you'll love me. I help so I'll feel worthy. That's not kindness. That's a hidden form of self-seeking. And it hurts more than it helps. So what do? How do we remain kind without becoming victims of our own generosity? We begin by recognizing that true kindness requires wisdom. It requires saying no when needed. It means recognizing manipulation, even when it comes wrapped in tears. It means stepping back and asking, is this actually helping them? Or am I enabling them to stay the same? Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them fall. Not because you don't care, but because you do. And here's something that might sting a little. Not everyone deserves your kindness. That doesn't mean you hate them. It means you protect your energy. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to stop giving. You're allowed to prioritize your peace. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. You see, kindness without wisdom is like a sword without a handle. It cuts the one who wields it. But when you sharpen that kindness with discernment, when you temper it with boundaries, it becomes transformative. It heals without harming. It uplifts without enabling. And that's the kind of kindness the Buddha pointed us toward, not soft, naive giving, but fierce, conscious compassion. So here's a question for you. Are you kind because you're afraid to be anything else? Because if your kindness is rooted in fear of being disliked, abandoned, or judged, then it's not kindness. It's a shield, and shields can become cages. When compassion becomes a cage, escaping the trap of endless giving, have you ever felt trapped by your own goodness? Like no matter how much love, support, and understanding you give, it's never enough, and worse, no one seems to notice how much it's costing you. That's the silent prison of unchecked compassion. It's one of the most seductive traps in human experience, the belief that if we just keep giving, something will change, someone will change. But what if your giving is the very thing that's keeping the cycle alive? What if, instead of healing others, your compassion is enabling their stagnation and silently eroding your own strength? This is the part of kindness that no one talks about. On the shadow side, we love the idea of compassion, of being the person who's always there, always loving, always forgiving. But when compassion is divorced from clarity, when we give without direction, without self-awareness, it becomes a chain. Not just around others, but around ourselves. And the scariest part, it doesn't feel wrong. In fact, it often feels righteous. We confuse exhaustion with virtue. We wear our emotional fatigue like a badge of honor, quietly hoping someone will finally see all we've given and give back. But that moment rarely comes, does it? Instead, the more you give, the more is expected. The more boundaries you erase, the more invisible you become. And slowly, your identity deforms into that of a caretaker, a fixer, a savior. You start believing that your worth is measured by how useful you are to others. You stop asking for anything. You stop taking up space. You become a ghost in your own life. Here's the truth. Compassion becomes a cage when it's used to avoid confrontation. When it's used to bypass the hard work of saying no, of disappointing people, of embracing the discomfort of boundaries. We tell ourselves we're being kind, but often we're just afraid. Afraid of being disliked, afraid of losing connection, afraid of seeing ourselves as selfish. But real compassion, wise compassion, doesn't avoid the truth. It embraces it, no matter how uncomfortable. Because real compassion knows that growth often requires pain. Think about the people in your life who always need something from you. The ones who never seem to grow, no matter how much you help. The ones who drain your energy, but always come back with more problems, more drama, more needs. Do they really want to change? Or have they learned that your compassion is a renewable resource, one they can tap into endlessly without ever doing the work themselves? The Buddha warned of this dynamic, not in modern psychological terms, but through his teachings on craving and attachment. He knew that helping others without discernment can actually strengthen their delusions. He spoke of idiot compassion, a term later echoed by Tibetan masters, which refers to the kind of giving that comes from ignorance, not wisdom. The kind that mistakes enabling for love. The kind that keeps both people stuck in suffering. So what's the way out? How do we escape the cage of compassion without becoming cold or callous? It starts with self-inquiry. Ask yourself, why do I keep giving to this person? Is it love or is it guilt? Is it care or is it fear? Is it generosity or is it a need to be seen as the good one? That level of honesty can be uncomfortable, even shocking. But it's necessary, because once you see the hidden motives behind your kindness, you reclaim your power. You stop giving from a place of lack. You stop performing goodness and start embodying it. Then comes the second step, perhaps even harder, boundaries. Real boundaries, not the kind you hint at. Not the kind you hope people will just sense, but the kind you say out loud with firmness and love. The kind that says, I care about you, but I will not destroy myself to save you. That's real compassion. That's the kind of love that liberates. Because here's the paradox, when you stop rescuing people, they are forced to face themselves. And while not everyone will rise to the occasion, some will. You might be surprised who grows in your absence. And even if they don't, you will. You'll become someone who gives from overflow, not depletion. Someone who loves with strength, not sacrifice. Someone whose kindness has edges that protect, guide, and empower. So let me ask you, have you mistaken submission for kindness? Have you sacrificed your truth to keep someone else comfortable? And what would your life look like if your compassion had boundaries? The wisdom of no, why saying less can be the most profound act of kindness. We live in a culture obsessed with saying yes. Yes to helping. Yes to showing up. Yes to carrying someone else's burdens, because we think that's what love looks like. And for a long time, we've equated presence with goodness. But what if the deepest act of love is absence? What if the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop showing up for their chaos? What if your silence says more than your words ever could? There's a hidden, almost mystical, wisdom in the word no. It's a word that has ended wars, drawn sacred boundaries, and protected the soul. But it's also a word drenched in fear for many of us. We fear what it will mean about us. Will people think we're selfish, cold, or ungrateful? Will they see us as unloving? But here's the radical truth. Saying no when it's necessary is not a withdrawal of love, it's the highest form of it. Because no says, I will not lie to you. I will not enable this illusion. I will not participate in your suffering any longer, not because I don't care, but because I do. You see, the Buddha didn't teach people by constantly affirming them. He didn't flatter their egos or indulge their ignorance. He sat in silence. He asked questions that cut through delusion like a blade. But sometimes he walked away, not out of apathy, but out of clarity. And that's a form of kindness we rarely recognize, the kindness of restraint. There's something deeply powerful about not reacting, about not rushing in to fix or explain or convince. There's a sacred space that opens when we allow people to face the consequences of their own choices without interference. That's not cruelty. That's trust. It's trusting that they too are capable of awakening, that they too have an inner teacher, but that your constant involvement might actually be blocking them from hearing it. Most people are addicted to being needed. It makes us feel important, useful, loved. But that neediness, ours and theirs, can quickly turn into a dance of mutual dependency. They create the crisis. We respond. They collapse. We catch, over and over again. And we call it love, but it's not. It's fear disguised as compassion. It's control disguised as care. And the only way to break that cycle is through the wisdom of less. Less talking, less solving, less rescuing, more watching, more waiting, more walking away when the moment calls for it. Think about it. Have you ever had someone tell you the truth in silence? You're spiraling, venting, making excuses, and they just look at you. Not with judgment, but with unwavering presence. That silence becomes a mirror. You see yourself clearly, maybe for the first time. That's a kindness that words can't deliver. That's the power of holding space without filling it. We forget that growth often happens in emptiness, and in the pause, in the discomfort. And when we're always rushing to fill that space with comfort, advice, or validation, we rob others of the sacred fire they need to walk through. Sometimes your absence is the only thing that allows someone else to finally meet themselves. So I ask you this: where in your life are you overspeaking? Overgiving? Overdoing? Who benefits from your constant involvement, and who might secretly need your absence to grow? Are you brave enough to let them fall? Are you wise enough to know that some lessons can only be learned through falling? And here's the hardest part. Are you willing to disappoint people to stay true to yourself? Because if your kindness depends on being liked, it's not kindness, it's performance. But if your kindness is rooted in truth, in love that doesn't flinch from hard choices, then your no becomes an act of liberation. Not just for you, but for everyone who's been relying on your silence to keep avoiding their own awakening. In fierce compassion, how to love without losing yourself, we've been taught that love means giving everything, that compassion looks like sacrifice, and that to be kind is to be endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly selfless. But what if that isn't love at all? What if true compassion doesn't require us to abandon ourselves? What if the most powerful kind of love is the one that refuses to lose itself? This is where fierce compassion comes in. It's a concept found in the deepest traditions, from the fiery wisdom of Buddhist bodhisattvas to the stern love of a parent who knows that saying no today might save a life, but tomorrow. Fierce compassion doesn't coddle, it doesn't collapse, and it doesn't compromise the truth. It loves with clarity. It gives with discernment. It acts not from guilt or fear, but from deep inner alignment. To live with fierce compassion is to stop choosing between yourself and others. It means you no longer accept the lie that kindness requires your suffering. You realize that your peace matters too, that your intuition is sacred, that your energy is finite, and that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. It means being a mirror, honest, clear, loving, and unshakable. When we embody fierce compassion, we realize that we can care deeply without rescuing. We can support someone without carrying their pain for them. We can show up and still walk away if the situation demands it. We stop trying to fix people and instead trust their journey. We stop giving from depletion and start giving from overflow. But this isn't easy. Fierce compassion is uncomfortable. It will stretch you. It will challenge your deepest programming. People may not understand it. They may call you cold, selfish, or distant. But that's only because they were used to your compliance, not your truth. And truth, when it first appears, often feels like betrayal to those who benefited from your silence. Still, you must hold steady, because fierce compassion doesn't seek approval, it seeks liberation. And your liberation, theirs, everyone's. It's the kind of love that says, I see your pain, I see your potential, and I will not stand in the way of either. It's the kind of love that walks beside someone without dragging them, that listens without judgment, but also without enabling, that holds a hand, but not a burden that isn't yours to carry.